Hello and welcome to this class of Principles of Microeconomics. I am your teacher, Nadeem Sarwar. This is our second lecture on demand theory, in which we shall cover an important topic known as elasticity of demand. In this lecture, we shall first discuss what is the meant by elasticity and elasticity of demand. Then we shall discuss its measurement, determinants, and at the end we shall discuss income and cross elasticity as well. So let's start with the lecture. Students, the law of demand tells us that when the price of any commodity increases, its quantity demanded decreases, given other factors remain the same. However, the law of demand does not tell us how much the quantity demand will respond to change in price. This question is answered by elasticity of demand. However, before proceeding to elasticity of demand, let's first understand what is meant by elasticity. Students, elasticity measures the responsiveness or reaction of one variable due to a change in other variable. For example, as the summer season sets in and temperature starts to rise, the demand for cold drinks or the sale of ice cream increases. If we want to calculate how much the sales of ice cream increases as a result of increase in temperature, we shall be using the concept of elasticity. We use this formula, that is percentage change in reaction variable divided by percentage change in cost variable. Here, reaction variable is first variable, whereas cost variable is termed as second variable. We measure the change in a variable in percentage form by using this formula. Now we can easily understand what is meant by elasticity of demand. Since law of demand tells us that reaction variable is quantity demand and the cost variable is price, so elasticity of demand measures the change in quantity demand due to a change in price. Or in other words, it is the ratio of percentage change in quantity demanded to percentage change in price. Based on the value of elasticity, we can categorize the degrees of elasticity as more elastic or elastic demand, unitary elastic demand, or inelastic demand. If the reaction of quantity demanded is higher or greater compared to the reaction in price in percentage terms, then the absolute value of elasticity of demand is greater than 1. We call it as elastic demand. And if the reaction of quantity demand is smaller than change in price in percentage form, the absolute value of elasticity of demand is less than 1, which we call as inelastic or less elastic demand. Whereas if the change in both is equal in magnitude, then the absolute value of elasticity of demand will be equal to 1, called as unitary elastic demand. Now let's observe these cases on graph. Here we assume a demand curve. Let's take a point and join it with both axes. This gives us initial price and initial quantity. Now take any other point on the demand curve and join it with both axes. This shows that a small decrease in price resulted in large increase in quantity demanded. Therefore, this is the case of elastic demand. Next, again, we assumed a point on a demand curve and joined it with both axes. Now, we assumed a second point and joined it with both axes. This resulted in a fall in price and increase in quantity demanded. However, it seems that fall in price is equal to increase in the quantity demanded. Therefore, this is the case of unitary elastic demand. On the same lines, taking 2 points and joining them in this diagram, we can see that the reaction of price or the change in price is greater in magnitude, whereas the quantity demand shows smaller reaction to it. This is the case of inelastic demand. Normally, the demand for luxury items is highly elastic and the demand for necessities is quite inelastic. There are two further cases that represent the extreme values. One in which the demand curve is parallel to y-axis. Here, a change in price results in no change in quantity demand. Hence, elasticity of demand is zero. This may happen for a commodity which is needed in extreme emergency. Therefore, an increase in its price will not decrease the quantity demanded of it. Next is just an opposite case in which the demand curve is parallel to x-axis. Here demand remains the price remains same no matter what quantity is demanded. Since the change in price is zero, hence the elasticity is infinite. This happens when the product is produced by so many different firms and firms are powerless. The market power of the firm of a single firm is almost negligible. Hence, no firm is able to change the market price. As we can study this case in perfectly competitive markets. Now let's discuss how we can measure the value of elasticity of demand. Students, the measurement of elasticity of demand can be categorized into two broad methods. First, point elasticity method and next, arc elasticity method. We apply point elasticity method when there is a small change in price and quantity. Therefore, the 2 points representing first set of prices and quantity and second set of price and quantity are so close to each other that one may assume that as a single point. Whereas we apply arc elasticity method when the change in price and quantity is significant. There are two methods of measuring point elasticity. First called as percentage method and second called as geometric method. Similarly, to measure arc elasticity, we have a midpoint formula and total expenditure method. Now let's discuss all these four methods one by one. First is percentage method. The percentage method is a formula that is discussed in the start of the lecture. We use the same formula, that is, elasticity of demand is equal to percentage change in quantity demand divided by percentage change in price. And as we already discussed, the percentage change in a variable can be measured by dividing the change in variable by its base value and multiplying it by 100. Simplifying this gives us the final formula, which is delta Q over delta P multiplied by P over Q. Let's apply this formula on an example. Here we assume that price increased from 10 to 12 and quantity demand decreased from 50 to 49. Hence, the change in price, which is final value minus initial value, is 2 and the change in quantity is minus 1. Putting these values in the formula and simplifying, we have elasticity equal to minus 0.1. Students, normally the value of elasticity of demand is in negative. This is because the law of demand states an inverse relation between price and quantity demanded, unless the commodity is a special kind commodity called as given good. Therefore, while discussing the degree of elasticity, we ignore the minus value and compare the absolute value of the answer with 1. Since 0.1 is less than 1, so we can say that this is an example of inelastic demand. Next, let's discuss the geometric method. In geometric method, we use demand curve to find the elasticity on a single point in demand curve. We extend the given demand curve so that it touches both the axes and mark those points. Now we pinpoint a specific point to measure elasticity at that point. Here this is point E. Now the elasticity on point E can be measured by measuring the distance from point E to x-axis and dividing it by the distance from point E to where it connects with y-axis. So it will be EA that is distance along demand curve to x-axis divided by EB, distance along demand curve to y-axis. Let's suppose that EA equals 25 centimeter and EB equals 5 centimeter. So elasticity of demand at this point will be equal to 5. Remember, elasticity of demand has no unit with it. Based upon our understanding of geometric method, we can easily conclude that if our selected point lies in the middle of demand line, since the distance to along the demand curve to x-axis and along the demand curve to y-axis will be same. So the absolute value of elasticity of demand in this case will be equal to 1. If the distance is more towards, if the point selected lies close to x-axis, elasticity will be less than 1. And if it lies close to y-axis, the elasticity will be greater than 1. So we can say that as we move along the curve to right side, the value of elasticity falls. And as we move along the curve to left side, the value of elasticity rises. Hence, we have two extreme points. This is how we can measure elasticity of demand on a linear demand curve using geometric method. However, if the demand curve is non-linear, that is, instead of straight line, if it is like a curve, then to measure elasticity at a point, we draw a tangent that touches both axis and touches demand curve at this particular point. Now we apply the same formula on this tangent as shown here. This is all about point elasticity method. Now let's discuss the arc elasticity method. As we have already discussed that this method is suitable if there is a significant change in price and quantity. This method gives more precise value of elasticity of demand. First, midpoint formula. Here we divide the change in quantity not by the initial value of the quantity but by the middle value of two values. That is, the change in a variable is measured in a way that we divide the value the value of change not with the base value but with the middle value or average value of the two set of values, like the percentage change in quantity demand. We use this formula, that is delta QD means final value minus initial value, and we divide it not by the initial value but by the average of these two values. Similarly, for change in price, we divide the value of change in price not with the base value but by the average of two values. If we apply simple mathematics to it, the formula can be reduced to this shape. Here we simply put the values in this final shape to get measure of elasticity, as shown in the example. Next is by total expenditure or total outlay or total revenue. Since the total expenditures made by the consumers or total revenue received by the producer on a commodity is price times quantity. Hence, in this method, we see the relationship between price and total revenue, which gives us an idea of elasticity. However, this method does not give us precise value of elasticity. We can just know if the demand for the commodity is more elastic, less elastic, or unitary elastic. Since the price and quantity moves in opposite direction, therefore the total revenue will move in the direction which is dominated which dominates. That is, if an increase in price results in large increase in quantity demand, the total revenue will fall. Hence, we can say that whenever the price and total revenue or total expenditure move in opposite direction for a good, then that good is more elastic in demand. And when an increase in price results in smaller decrease in quantity, the price effect will dominate and hence the total revenue will increase. Therefore, whenever we see the movement in price and movement in total revenue is in same direction, we can infer that this is an inelastic demand case. However, when the change in price is responded equally by the quantity demand in magnitude, both a rise in demand and a fall in price, or a rise in price and fall in quantity demand cancel the magnitude of each other and total revenue remains the same. This is the case of unitary elastic goods. Let's also see it with the help of diagrams. Here we take a point and see the price and quantity. Now, because of the decrease in price, there is a small loss of revenue, but there is a big gain of revenue. So we can see that the gain in revenue will dominate and cancel out the effect of loss in revenue. Therefore, the total revenue will increase. And we already discussed that when price and revenue move in opposite directions, this is the case of elastic demand. Similarly, if a decrease in price which results in decreasing the revenue or a loss of revenue, are matched by increase in quantity demand of same magnitude. So the loss in revenue because of decrease in price is offset by the gain in revenue due to increase in demand. Hence, the elasticity of demand will be equal to 1 in absolute value. Next, we can see that because of decrease in price, the magnitude of loss in revenue is quite a large and the magnitude of gain of revenue is quite small. Therefore, this represents the case of inelastic demand where a decrease in price resulted in decrease of revenue. In other words, in this case, price and total revenue are moving in same direction. Next, we discuss some important determinants of elasticity. The value of elasticity of demand, that is, being it greater than 1, equal to 1, or less than 1, depends on so many factors. Some of these factors are number of substitutes. If a product is produced by too many firms, hence the consumer can enjoy a number of substitutes. Therefore, a small increase in price will result in large decrease in quantity demand, or a small increase in price will result in large decrease in quantity demand because consumers will move to other commodities. Similarly, a small decrease in price will attract the consumers of all the substitute towards this product and its quantity demand will increase. Therefore, higher the number of substitutes, higher is the elasticity. Second is the importance. If a commodity is very much important to a consumer, he or she may not care much about increase in its price. Hence, when it is very much important, the elasticity of a commodity is small. This is why the elasticity of demand of necessities is very, very small. Next is the budget share. If the commodity has small budget share in consumer's total budget, then consumer may not care much about a change in its price and continue to consume same amount of the good. Next is the time dimension. Sometimes a change in price happens, but within a short period of time, we cannot move towards the substitute items. Hence, the reaction is smaller. Whereas if we have a longer time period available, it is easy for the consumer to switch towards or from the substitute products. Therefore, the longer the time available, the higher is the elasticity. Next, we discuss the importance of elasticity. The concept of elasticity of demand is very, very important for both consumers and government. However, it is also important for producers. A producer, when deciding to change the price of its commodity, when offering sale discounts, or when increasing the price, also looks at how the consumers will behave, and it tries to quantify the reaction of consumers so that it can trace what will happen with the profit of this commodity. This tells us how much the concept of elasticity is important for producers. Similarly, a monopolist charges a price in a region of demand curve where its elasticity of demand is less than 1. Sorry, where its demand curve is more elastic. And the value of elasticity also helps monopolists to opt price discrimination. If the elasticity of demand in different markets is different, then consumer may change the price of its product in these two markets and hence can maximize his or her profit. This is for producer. Now for the government, it helps government to fix the tax rates on different commodities. A government that aims to increase the tax revenue can tax the goods which are inelastic in demand heavily because increase in price due to heavy taxes will not result in significant fall in quantity demand. Therefore, the tax revenues will increase. Similarly, for some products which are harmful for human health or for environment, government uses tax keeping in view the elasticity of the product to restrict the use of that product. This normally applies in case of carbon tax or in case of sin tax, which is normally imposed on cigarettes, alcohol, sugar, or any such products which are not very useful for human health. Next, we discuss the income elasticity of demand. Students, by income elasticity of demand, we mean to measure the change in demand due to percentage change in income. This can be calculated using the formula given. Let's take an example of normal goods. As we discussed in our previous lecture, that normal goods are those whose demand increase when the income of the consumer increases. Therefore, the change in quantity demand in this example is 10. Initial value of demand is 20, whereas the change in income is of 50 and initial value of the income is 100. Using this, we can see that the elasticity of demand is equal to 1. For normal goods, income elasticity of demand is positive. And here, the income elasticity of demand is equal to 1. That is a positive number. In case of inferior goods, an increase in income results in decrease in demand and vice versa. Therefore, for such goods, the relation between income and demand is inverse. So, the sign of income elasticity of demand will be negative. Next is the cross elasticity of demand, which measures a change in demand of one good due to a change in price of other good in percentage terms. Here we can categorize goods in two categories. First, substitutes and next, complements. Substitutes are the goods that are same in use. For example, Pepsi and Coke. Here, the Pepsi dropped its prices from 25 to 20, whereas Coke kept its prices same. So many consumers who were consuming Coke now shifted to Pepsi. Therefore, the demand for the Coke affected and in fact it decreased because of change in price of Pepsi. If we measure this impact, this is cross elasticity measured in this example. Next is the case of complements. Complements are the goods that are used together. For example, socks and shoes or automobiles and petrol. Here, an increase in the price of automobiles not only reduced the quantity demanded of automobile, but it also affected the sale of petrol. If we measure the change in sale of petrol because of change in price of automobiles, this is the case of cross elasticity of demand. The measurement can be seen in the example. Here, important point to note is that elasticity of demand is positive for substitutes and it is negative for complements. That's all for this lecture. Please post your questions and give your feedback in comments. Also consider liking the video, sharing the video, and subscribing the channel. Thank you and goodbye.